The sun was already burning high when I pulled into the fairground parking lot, stroller in the back seat, diaper bag packed like I was going on a weekend trip. Instead of just a few hours out, my son was babbling in the car seat, kicking his little legs, completely unaware that I was already feeling anxious about the day. I hadn't seen her in years, an old friend I'd recently reconnected with after having my son. Back in the day, we'd been inseparable. She'd been wild, spontaneous, always broke, but always up for an adventure. I used to find that charming. Now, as a married woman with a family and a budget, I wasn't so sure it was still endearing. When she suggested the fare, I hesitated. I knew these things weren't cheap. Parking, entry, rides, food, it all adds up. But I thought maybe this could be a nice day for our kids. I imagined us walking side by side, our kids laughing together on the kiddie rides, maybe a few pictures to capture the moment. So, against my better judgment, I said yes. She arrived 10 minutes late, her 2 boys running wild before she even closed her car door. "Hey," she called, like nothing had changed, sunglasses on, a cup of Starbucks in her hand. I smiled, but it was one of those tight, polite smiles, the kind you give when you're trying not to judge, but already are. "Let's grab the wristbands," I said, trying to corral my son toward the ticket booth. "Oh shoot," she said suddenly, patting her pockets. I left my wallet in the car. "Can you grab mine? I'll Venmo you in a sec." It didn't sound like a big deal. She'd Venmo me, right? I nodded, handed over my card, and bought 4 wristbands, 2 adults, 3 kids. It wasn't cheap, but I pushed the thought away. It was supposed to be a fun day. We started with the little rides, the spinning cups, the bouncy slides. The boys were screaming with excitement. My son was laughing, and for a while, I forgot about the money. It felt nice to have a friend again. Someone to talk to about motherhood, about how hard it can be. She was chatty, dramatic, and sometimes exhausting. But she filled the silence. Then, lunchtime came, and that's when things started to shift. We approached the food stalls. The smell of fried dough, grilled corn, and lemonade thick in the air. Her boys were already yelling what they wanted before we even saw the prices. "I want the big corn dog," one of them screamed. "Me too, and fries," yelled the other. She didn't say a word, just stood there smiling, scrolling on her phone. I took a deep breath, looked at the line and said, "Okay, let's get everyone something." She nodded and started ordering funnel cake, 2 lemonades, corn dogs, fries, nachos, and then, "Oh, and can you add that giant turkey leg too?" I blinked. That's a lot. You sure?" She smiled, totally unfazed. "Yeah, they'll share. And I'm starving." When the total flashed on the screen, my stomach dropped. $110. I hesitated for a second, waiting for her to say something. Maybe to pull out her phone, offer to Venmo me again. But she didn't. She just looked at me. So I paid. We sat under the shade of a tent, the kids tearing into their food, grease dripping down their hands. She was talking about her husband, how they were still living together, but basically separated, how he'd cut her off financially, how hard it was to be a stay-at-home mom. I listened, trying to be understanding, but my head was spinning. If she was broke, why had she suggested this expensive outing? Why hadn't she said anything before we came? After we finished eating, I gathered my courage. "Hey," I said casually, trying to keep my voice light. "Do you mind Venmoing me for the tickets and food?" It all added up pretty fast. She looked me straight in the eyes, chewing on her straw. "Oh, I don't have any money right now. My husband cut me off. I'm literally broke." I froze. "Wait, what? Then why did you say you'd Venmo me?" She shrugged, her tone defensive. "You wouldn't understand. You and your husband both have good jobs. You don't know what it's like to struggle." Her words stung, not because they were true, but because of the entitlement behind them. I worked hard. My husband worked hard. and we budgeted for everything. We weren't rich. We were careful. That's the difference. I wanted to say something sharp, but instead, I just nodded. Okay, I said quietly, and started packing up my stuff. We began walking toward the exit, the sun beating down, the kids whining that they were tired. My patience was gone. I just wanted to go home. As we passed another attraction, an escape room booth with flashing lights and a loudspeaker. Her eyes lit up. Oh my God, that looks fun. We should go. I stared at her in disbelief. It's not included in the passes, I said flatly. She kept staring at me with that pleading look, like she was waiting for me to cave again, but I didn't. No, I said firmly. It's getting late. My son needs to nap. Her smile faded, replaced by a hint of annoyance. Fine, she muttered. We walked to our cars in silence. I said goodbye politely, strapped my son in his car seat, and drove off. But inside, something was burning. That feeling, when you realize someone you thought was a friend doesn't see you as a person, just as a wallet. That night, I told my husband everything. Every detail, from the forgotten wallet, to the $110 lunch, to the guilt trip about her being broke. He didn't even hesitate. You need to cut her off, he said. She's using you. I knew he was right. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. Over the next few days, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, missed calls again. Hey girl, when are we hanging out again? I can come over with the boys. They miss your son. T, why aren't you answering? I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening every time her name popped up. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that what happened didn't bother me. 4 days later, I finally decided to text her back, to say everything I'd been holding in. And that's when things really exploded. By the 4th day, my phone was a war zone of unread messages. Every notification had her name flashing on the screen. Little digital ghosts of a friendship that should have died years ago. I sat on the couch after putting my son down for his nap, the living room quiet, except for the soft hum of the baby monitor. My husband was at work, and I had no one to talk to except the endless stream of texts from her. Hey girl, what's up? Can we take the kids to the park later? You okay? You've been quiet. I can come over with the boys if you want. They'd love to see your son. Every new ping made my chest tighten. There was this mix of anger and disbelief inside me. The kind that doesn't fade with time, only grows heavier the longer you stay silent. I opened my banking app one more time, staring at the $180 charge from the fare. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the lie, the assumption, the nerve it took to look me in the eyes and say she'd pay me back, only to turn around and play the victim. So I finally typed out the message I'd been rehearsing in my head all week. No overthinking this time. No emojis. No sugarcoating. Me, hey, I know you've been calling and texting to hang out, but honestly, I'm not really interested unless you can pay me back for the fare. I spent a lot of money, and you told me you'd Venmo me, but you didn't. I feel like you took advantage of me, especially when you waited until after I paid to tell me you had no money. If you'd been honest from the start, I would have planned something free, like the splash pad or park. I would never do that to you. I stared at the message for a few seconds before hitting send. My heart pounded in my chest, like I'd just done something dangerous. But it needed to be said. She read it within minutes. The typing bubble appeared right away. Her, what do you expect from me? I'm depressed, going through a divorce, and have no money. I tell you the truth, and you use it against me. You're just holding everything you paid for over my head when I never asked you to do that. SMH. I felt my jaw clench. I could almost hear her tone. Defensive, manipulative, full of that practiced guilt she used whenever someone called her out. Never asked me. She literally had. She'd stood next to me at the ticket booth and said, I'll Venmo you. I took a deep breath and typed again. Me. You literally did ask me. You said you were going to Venmo me and lied to my face. You waited until after I paid for everything to tell me you were broke. I get that you're going through a lot, and I'm sorry for what you're dealing with. But that doesn't make it okay to take advantage of people. This time, her reply came slower, shorter. Her. I have enough going on right now. I really don't need to be dealing with this. Translation: I don't want to take accountability. I was done being the nice one. Me, so are you going to pay me back or not? Her next message came in one long self-pitying paragraph. Her, not, you don't need me to pay you back. You're doing just fine. You're just a greedy person. You literally have your husband paying for everything. You have no idea what it's like to struggle. I'm struggling so bad right now. My husband doesn't help me with anything, and I never have money. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking with disbelief. Greedy, because I didn't want to fund her entire family's trip. Then I remembered the Starbucks cup in her hand that morning. The one she'd been sipping from while I paid for her kids' wristbands. My irritation boiled over. Me. You literally showed up with Starbucks though. Her answer was instant. Her. Wow. You're going to be like that? Watching all my expenses now. Why are you even texting me? I don't want to be friends with someone who holds everything over my head. You're just a greedy person who thinks she's better than everyone. You always look down on people. I never should have told you anything about my marriage, because clearly, you don't even care. And just like that, the mask slipped completely. Every ounce of fake sweetness. Every hey girl message. Every time she'd laughed like we were still teenagers. Gone. All that was left was resentment. The kind that comes from someone who doesn't actually want friendship. They just want what they can take from you. I didn't even reply. There was nothing left to say. I blocked her. And when I did, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from resolution. It was the kind that comes from acceptance. From realizing someone's been draining you slowly. One favor at a time. And you finally pulled the plug. That night, I sat in bed scrolling through our old photos. The ones from years ago, before kids, before marriage, before the weight of adulthood hit. 2 girls smiling, holding iced coffees, laughing like the world belonged to us. I remembered the good times, the late night drives, the inside jokes, the way we used to dream about growing up and having families. Thinking it would all be easy. But people change. Some grow up, some don't, and somewhere between the laughter and the lies, she'd become someone I didn't recognize anymore. I wasn't angry anymore, just disappointed, because the truth is, I didn't lose a friend at the fair. I just finally saw who she really was. The next morning, my phone was quiet for the first time all week. No text, no calls, no guilt-tripping voicemails. I poured myself a coffee, looked at my son playing on the rug, and smiled. Sometimes cutting people off isn't cruel. It's necessary. Because peace, once you taste it, is worth more than any apology that never comes. The days that followed were strangely quiet. No buzzing phone, no forced laughter, no guilt sitting heavy in my chest. At first, the silence felt foreign, like the kind of quiet that follows a storm. You know it's peaceful, but part of you still expects the thunder to come back. I'd gotten so used to her constant messages. The casual, hey, wanna hang? The sudden, can you cover me just this once? The endless stream of emotional crises that somehow always became my problem. It had been a routine, a toxic one, but a routine nonetheless. Now my phone stayed still on the counter, and for the first time in a while, I could breathe. 2 days after I blocked her, a mutual friend, Jenna, texted me. Hey, did something happen between you and her name? She's been saying you freaked out over nothing. I sighed. Of course. She wasn't done yet. I told Jenna everything, not in anger, just in facts. The fair, The $110 lunch, the fake promise to Venmo, the guilt trip, the Starbucks, the insults. Jenna was quiet for a moment before she replied. Wow, she did something similar to me last year. Borrowed money for her son's birthday party and never paid me back. Then ghosted me. I wasn't surprised. It's almost funny how you start to notice patterns only after you step back. When you're in it, you're blinded by empathy, by the desire to be kind. You tell yourself, she's struggling, she just needs help. But what you don't realize is that some people confuse kindness for weakness. They don't see generosity. They see opportunity. That night, my husband came home and noticed how calm I looked. You seem lighter, he said, wrapping his arms around me in the kitchen. I think I am, I said. It's weird. It's like I didn't realize how much space she was taking up in my life until I removed her. He smiled, kissed my forehead. That's what boundaries do. They protect your peace. Boundaries. Such a simple word. Yet it's the one thing we're never really taught how to build. Especially as women, we're conditioned to be understanding, forgiving, patient, even when someone's stepping all over us. We're told to be nice when someone's being manipulative, to not make it a big deal when someone uses us. But I'd reached a point in my life where being nice was costing me too much. The next weekend, I took my son to the park, the free splash pad I'd mentioned in that text. The sun was out. The air smelled of sunscreen and grass, and kids were running through the sprinklers screaming with joy. I watched my son laugh as the water hit his face, his small hands clapping in delight. My chest swelled with peace, a simple, unbothered peace that money can't buy. I thought about that day at the fair, how I'd been surrounded by noise and chaos, trying to please someone who clearly didn't value me. And now here I was, with nothing but sunshine, water, and my little boy's laughter. And it felt perfect. It hit me then. Friendship isn't supposed to feel like obligation. It's not supposed to drain you, or make you anxious before every outing, or leave you feeling guilty for setting limits. It's supposed to add peace, not take it away. A week passed before I heard about her again. Jenna told me she'd been telling people I abandoned her during a hard time, that I was heartless and money obsessed. I didn't even react, because that's what people like her do. They rewrite the story so they can keep being the victim, and honestly, let her. I didn't need to prove my side to anyone anymore. I knew my truth. I'd helped her, supported her, paid for things without complaint, and all she'd done was take advantage of it. If that made me heartless, then maybe having a heart isn't worth it. If it means letting people walk all over you. One evening, I sat on the porch with my husband, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with streaks of pink and gold, the kind of beauty that makes you quiet. He handed me a cup of tea. You know, he said, some people aren't supposed to grow with us. They're just meant to show us what we won't tolerate anymore. I smiled. Yeah, I guess she taught me something after all. Like what? He asked. That boundaries aren't mean, I said. They're self-respect. He nodded. Exactly. And that's when I realized maybe losing her wasn't a loss at all. Maybe it was a lesson I needed to learn. I started focusing more on the people who did appreciate me. The friends who checked in without expecting anything, who offered to pay sometimes, who valued my time and energy. I even met a few other mums at the park. Women who shared snacks, swapped parenting stories, and laughed without hidden competition. It was refreshing. No manipulation, no guilt trips, just kindness. Months later, I got a message request on social media. It was her. The first line said, "Hey, can we talk?" I think we both overreacted. I didn't open it, didn't read past the preview, because I'd learned something else too. Closure isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's silence. I deleted the request and locked my phone. Then I looked over at my son. who was busy stacking blocks on the living room floor, his tiny face full of focus. That was where my energy belonged, not in fixing broken friendships that were never real to begin. Later that night, I thought about the version of me from before, the one who always said yes, who paid without hesitation, who carried other people's problems like they were her own. She was kind, but she was tired. And maybe that's why life gave me someone like that friend, to remind me that kindness without boundaries isn't compassion, it's self-destruction. I looked out the window at the quiet street, the stars faintly visible in the dark sky. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole, not because everything was perfect, but because I'd learned how to stop apologizing for protecting my peace. It's strange how time has a way of softening things, not erasing them, just dulling the sharp edges until the memory no longer cuts. Months passed. The seasons changed. The fairgrounds that once held so much tension now smelled of crisp autumn air and pumpkin spice instead of fried dough and guilt. Life went on, and somewhere between the school runs, work calls, and grocery trips, I realized I hadn't thought about her in weeks, not even once. That's how healing really works. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet. It slips in softly when you're too busy living to notice that the wound isn't bleeding anymore. One afternoon, I was sitting at a cafe, the same one where we used to meet years ago, long before everything went wrong. My son was at preschool, and I had a rare hour to myself. I sat by the window, sipping coffee, scrolling through my phone, and there it was. A memory notification. A photo from 2 years ago. The two of us, smiling under bright fairground lights, cotton candy in our hands. For a moment, I just stared at it. We looked happy, genuinely happy. Before life got complicated, before expectations replaced laughter, before guilt replaced gratitude, and instead of anger or bitterness, I just felt sad. Not for me.
For her. Because somewhere deep down, I knew she wasn't evil. Just lost.
Lost in her pain, her resentment, her own chaos. But I also knew that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. There's a saying I once read, you can't pour from an empty cup. But what they don't tell you is sometimes people will keep drinking from yours even after it's dry. That's what she did. And I let her. Not because I was weak, but because I didn't want to believe someone I cared about could use me like that. That's the hardest part about growing up. Realizing that love, friendship, and kindness all need limits. Because when you give endlessly to people who take endlessly, you don't end up saving them. You just lose yourself. After that realization, I started being more intentional about who I let into my space. I stopped saying yes out of guilt. Stopped apologizing for things that weren't my fault. Stopped chasing people who showed me I was disposable. And something beautiful happened. The more boundaries I set, the more peace I found. My circle got smaller, but the laughter got louder. My days felt calmer, lighter. Even my husband noticed it one evening when we were putting our son to bed. "You seem happier," he said. "I am," I replied. "It's amazing how much peace you find when you stop entertaining chaos." He smiled. Guess that fair trip was worth something after all. We both laughed, and it felt good to laugh about it now, knowing it no longer had power over me. A few weeks later, I saw her again, purely by coincidence. We were at the grocery store. She was in the frozen aisle with her 2 boys. She looked tired, thinner than before, her hair tied up messily, dark circles under her eyes. For a moment, our eyes met. Time froze. Just for a heartbeat. She looked startled, maybe embarrassed. I gave a polite nod. Not out of awkwardness, but peace. No anger, no hatred. Just quiet closure. She opened her mouth like she might say something, but I smiled softly, turned my cart, and walked away. I didn't owe her a scene, or an explanation, or another chance. Some stories don't need sequels. Driving home, I thought about how different that moment felt compared to the one at the fair. Back then, she drained me of energy, patience, and money. Now, she couldn't take anything from me because I finally understood that boundaries weren't walls, they were doors. And I got to choose who walked through them, and she wasn't welcome anymore. That night, after putting my son to sleep, I sat on the porch with a blanket and a cup of tea. The air was cool, the stars bright. I opened the notes app on my phone and started writing, something I hadn't done in a while. It wasn't for anyone else, just for me. Sometimes God doesn't remove people from your life to punish you. He removes them to protect you. I typed that sentence and stared at it for a long time because that's exactly what it felt like. Protection disguised as heartbreak. I saved the note and put my phone away. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to vent, explain, or justify anything. I just sat in that peace. The kind that only comes when you finally stop letting chaos rent space in your soul. Over the following months, I made new memories. Simple ones. Family picnics, quiet weekends, movie nights, things that didn't revolve around anyone's drama. I started saying no more often and with less guilt. And every time I did, it felt like taking another step toward freedom. Sometimes I still think about her, not with bitterness, but with gratitude, because without her, I wouldn't have learned some of the most important lessons of adulthood. Not everyone who calls you friend is one. Empathy doesn't mean you have to tolerate disrespect. You can forgive someone without letting them back in your life. And peace is priceless. Once you find it, never trade it for temporary company. A few months later, I went back to that same fair, this time with just my husband and son. As we walked through the gates, I felt a familiar breeze, smelled the same fried food, heard the same music, but everything was different. Because this time, I wasn't there out of obligation, I was there by choice. My son ran ahead laughing, my husband holding my hand, and I realized something quietly profound. The fair hadn't changed. I had, and that made all the difference. I looked around at the flashing lights, the children squealing, the laughter echoing through the night, and smiled. Sometimes, the things that once hurt you can become reminders of how far you've come. That's the real victory. Not revenge, not apology, not payback. Just peace. Because when you stop letting people take advantage of your kindness, you stop bleeding for those who'd never do the same for you. And that's when you finally understand. Cutting someone off isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. Dear past, this is my last letter to you. Once, you were my closest friend. We used to laugh until our sides hurt, talk for hours about everything and nothing, and I truly believed we'd always be in each other's lives. I thought our bond was real, unbreakable, but time has a way of showing what's hidden beneath smiles. Your friendship wasn't built on care. It was built on convenience. And my kindness, you mistook it for weakness. I still remember that day. The noise of the fair, the laughter of our kids, and me quietly convincing myself that it was okay, that you'd pay me back later. But you never did. Not the money, not the honesty, not the respect. You looked me straight in the eyes and lied, then hid behind excuses and guilt. Something inside me broke that day. Not just trust, but the gentle affection I once carried for you without question. You said, "I'm depressed. I have no money." And I wondered, does sadness excuse manipulation? Does struggle justify deceit? No, those were just excuses. And it took me too long to realize some people don't love you. They love what you can give them. As long as you keep saying yes, they stay. The moment you say no, you become the villain in their story. But here's the truth I've learned. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing yourself from what they did. I've forgiven you. And more importantly, I've forgiven myself for being too patient, too quiet, too hopeful. I no longer open my door to everyone who knocks. My time, my energy, my peace, they're not for sale anymore. A few weeks ago, I went back to that same fair. The same gates, the same lights, the same songs. But everything felt different because I was different. This time, my heart was light. My son was laughing, my husband smiling beside me, and I realized peace feels nothing like what I used to call friendship. The fair hadn't changed. I had. Sometimes you still cross my mind, but not with anger anymore. Just a quiet sort of compassion. Because now I know. You weren't evil, you were empty. And I was the one who kept trying to fill you. But people like that never get full. They only take until you decide to stop giving. So thank you for teaching me what boundaries mean. For showing me that silence can be strength. For reminding me that love without respect isn't love at all. You were a painful chapter, but you were also an important one. Now that chapter is closed, and my story continues. Lighter, wiser, freer. I forgive you, but I won't let you back in. That's not bitterness. That's peace. So wherever you are, I hope you find healing. I already have. The friend who finally let go.